Welcome to the Recruitment Equation, the no-nonsense podcast where we get real about what it takes to succeed in talent acquisition. We're diving into the world of recruitment, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. From innovative strategies to unfiltered conversations with industry leaders, we're here to give you the insights you need to elevate the way you attract and hire. This episode is supported by Beyond Talents and Develop Diverse, your partner for future-proof talent attraction. Let's get started. Wonderful. I've been looking so much forward to this as well. Just like the other episodes, I say this every time. But today we're going to talk about a very important topic that I think many find both difficult and easy at the same time. I think we're going to discuss it, and we're going to come and end up with an equation for this, because this is a recruitment equation. We're going to talk about screening, Nicklas. I've been looking forward to this. Have you?
I've been looking forward as well.
Wonderful.
And
We're supposed to say that, I know.
I am. But my name is Nicklas Pyrdol, and you are?
Byriel, and we are together hosting the recruitment equation.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Tell me a little bit about screening here. Nicklas, you're doing it every day. That's your job.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
Correct?
So screening is actually, it depends on who you ask. So for some people, screening is only the top funnel initial part of the recruitment process. So you have your pool of applicants or people that you have done outreach to. So you have the entire candidate pool, and now you screen. And then some people believe that when you've then made the initial selection and then began the interview process, then it's called selection.
Yeah.
But screening could also just be what we do when we choose who should progress to the next stage in the recruitment process, no matter if that stage is you've applied or you have done a test or you've been to first interview, second interview, or whatever. So it actually depends. Is screening only like the initial top funnel selection, or is it that thing we do whenever we select someone and deselect other people? I believe it's the latter. So I believe it's every time we are going from some to fewer. No matter if we're going from 100 to 10, or from 10 to 5, or from 5 to 3, or 3 to 1, or whatever. Then we are doing a screening.
Yeah.
We are looking at specific factors and selecting who do we believe would be a better match for the job in this particular team, in this particular department, in this particular company, at this particular point in time, than other candidates that we might also be able to choose. Is that what do you think about?
I agree. Right. Yeah. And the good thing is in this, we don't have anyone that will disagree with us in this room, which is great. We can just agree that this is what we are going to call it. So we are referring to screening as the process, and every time you have selection criteria that in each step of the way until you found your match for the role, your addition to the team.
Exactly. You're
screening for each part, each step of the way.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Why do we screen? Why don't we just... I know a guy. I love him. I want to mention his name, Lars Lundman. Okay. He's one of the few PhDs we have in Denmark in recruitment, like a PhD in recruitment. He works at my old company, Caseflow. It was once Inflow, now it's Caseflow. And he actually... I remember a conversation I had with him once. He's fantastic. And he was like, you know what? We could just as easily take the pile of 100 applicants and then just randomly take one and then give them the job. Because, if they succeed or not, it's not based on what they enter the job with, but how we onboard them, how we train them, how we whatever.
Yeah.
So if I just start there with that very provocative, why do we even screen? Why don't we just randomly choose someone, or just choose the first one and then hire them? Why, Pete?
I like that, right?
Yeah.
Because
I ask you. Why
don't we do that? I think if I just take my own company, I've also hired a lot of people over the years, let alone supporting others on the recruitment, of course, right? I feel like that would not give me the best candidates. I believe I know what candidates need to be successful in the role. That is my own ego saying that, right? I know I'm a specialist in this. I know if I'm hiring someone, I know exactly what they will. So I'm screening to make sure I get the best candidate.
Yeah.
Is that similar to what you could hear from others?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We screen so we increase the chances of that person thriving and succeeding, being good and being happy. But it's just now the cool thing here is, and we talked about some, like the first study of this, and that's what all they refer to. That's Smith and Hunter, that's the first study in what we call job performance prediction. So what factors can we look at that actually predict in some way who would be the better match for a role than other candidates? Because this is also very important. For me, you cannot say you are or you are not. It's on a spectrum. Let's say that every candidate, they can get points from 1 to 100. Then it's very rare, almost never, that a candidate scores 100. It's that perfect human being. But it's as rare that a person scores 1. They would never in a million years, no matter how much onboarding or training or whatever. So the majority of applicants and candidates, they are somewhere in between. And our job is to find the one who's just the best of the bunch, not the perfect and not the one who is a match and all the others, but the one who is the best match over all the other people that we could choose.
Yeah.
And that's where it's funny to look at what data points are we actually using in recruitment to screen candidates and at which point in time.
Yeah.
So I want to teach you a bit. So in your experience, the very first step, when you go from, not in developed diverse, but in the majority of companies, when you go from having a pool of candidates, 20, 50, 100, you haven't looked at anyone yet. What's the first thing you look at or companies look at before choosing how do we go from this large pool of candidates to the people we want to invest more time in?
I'm going to respond and then I'm going to take it a step back, actually, because I think today, in my own experience, the CV is the first thing.
Exactly.
I know very few people or companies, that is. There's a really good cases, I think. Joe and the Juice have been very public about how they're doing it right now for how they hire for their juice shops, which I really find interesting and really inspiring. I really like the way that they're doing things. We've had Julia on from Visma previously, right, where they've also are doing a lot of different things too.
Yeah.
But for me, the majority of large companies are using the CV and asking for the CV and screening based on CV for the first step.
Yeah.
Maybe a cover letter too.
Yeah, exactly. And then take it a step back.
Yeah. Because I think for me and what I see is that where the first screening you have to start is by not just the job description, but the start before the conversation. What is it? What does it take to get this role?
Yeah.
Whether it's predictiveness, I don't know how many people actually talk about that in that way. What is predicting the success in this role? But at least, what are the qualifications we need? What can we provide to this person?
Yeah, exactly.
What are the development chances? What is the salary level? All of these ways to figure out, without mentioning anything that has nothing to do with the role, right? But just what are the skills that we need? What are the qualifications? What's the background? What are we looking for?
Yeah, exactly.
And that has to be very clear and can't just be copied from an old template. And it definitely cannot be ChatGPT filling that out.
No.
Because then how are we going to screen?
Exactly.
What are we going to look for in that CV? Right?
Yeah.
So I think that is the first step. So I always talking about screening and talking about how do we actually select. Well, that has to be, you cannot talk about that before you are sure that you did, whether it's an intake meeting, a role description in the beginning, you have to do that right. And you have to invest time in that.
Exactly.
Both hiring manager and TA or HR business partners, whoever's supporting for the role.
Exactly.
So that was the step back.
That was the step back. Yeah, but it's actually a really good point that the first screening we do is when we decide on the job requirements.
Yeah.
Because the moment we have selected in our requirements, well, you need to be able to speak Danish, then you have already decided that all the candidates we will get that don't speak Danish, they will be deselected. The moment we have chosen that you need to be in the office the majority of the week, we have now deselected per default all the people that don't live in proximity of the office. So you're totally right that our screening starts in our intake meeting and in our job requirements. Yeah. And that is actually often where we, where we go wrong. That is in the intake meeting where we, I often tell the story that I have one of the most successful, tech scale-ups here in Copenhagen, have them as a customer. They have one in their C-suite who was brought in from corporate. And he's killing it. He's like the best manager they've ever had. He's thriving. He's succeeding. He's enjoying it. And he's from corporate. He had never been in scale-up. And now when I hire to his team, he's like, they need to come from scale-up. They need to know what it's like. And I'm like, what the
you cannot say that.
No, I'm like, are you listening to yourself?
Yeah.
If they had told, if they had that conversation before hiring you, you would per default had been deselected even before. But now you are one. You are like
exactly.
You are competitive edge because they hired you.
Yeah.
But we adopt those norms of you need to come from the industry. You need to have experienced being in this type of company.
You should probably have been in Google too.
Google that,
right?
Google,
And if you didn't study at CBS or DTU,
then you also.
I don't know if you can be hired here because I studied there and it was really hard.
Exactly.
So I know that they're really good there.
Yeah, exactly.
So all of these biases, they do sneak in, and if I'm not very clear in my intake or role description or the conversations I'm having, both as a hiring manager, because I, of course, will be part of the screening when we're further along in the process, but also in the TA team, how am I going to select?
Exactly.
Then I will select based on my gut feeling and the CV. And we know, back to your point, predictiveness.
Yeah.
Study show, the past experience is not a predictor of success.
No, exactly.
So why do we need the CV, right?
Exactly.
But we're still using this CV.
Yeah.
I would say, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think so. Majority of enterprises, everyone on C25 in Denmark is using the CV to screen.
Yeah. And I actually have, I acknowledge the fact that when people then challenge the perspective and asks, well, what should we put in its place?
Yeah.
If we do not select on resume, what could we select on? You actually mentioned something in terms of, you could have stuff that are prerequisite, like yes and no questions, where if you don't answer yes to this, you won't. It's a practical. You need a work permit. You need a driver's license. You need some language proficiency in something. Something that is indiscussable. It's not an experience. It's like a practical requirement. That's like one thing you could do.
Yeah.
Then we can discuss opening up.
Yeah.
And then, we could do. The funny thing is, we could do almost anything else.
Yeah.
One thing that is going on at the moment is, and Julie from Dinero Vismas had talked about this. So replacing resume with asking questions. How would you approach it? Like mini cases or mini cover letter. Now, the cool thing about that is you can anonymize. That's really good. Now, this is funny because it comes from me. But I also get smarter.
Intro.
I also get smarter. But logically, it makes sense. It's very sympathetic. I haven't seen a research study yet. Right now, we are assuming that replacing the resume with written, qualitatively made copywriting is a better and less biased initial screening than an anonymized resume.
Yeah.
That's what we do know is that there is a an actual work sample. That's why I loved Interflow, and that is actually a better job performance prediction. Show us an actual work sample of the job, but answering in writing why you are motivated. Actually just making a smaller a smaller cover letter, or a very qualitatively made case. I haven't seen the evidence that is better than anything else.
Nope, me neither.
So,
and there's a lot of things going on too now that I think when we look at peer review, I love my peer-reviewed studies.
Yeah.
But I think we cannot wait either for those. I think what I hear the most these days is when I'm asking for qualitative feedback or qualitative questions, let's just say, whether that is a cover letter, whether that is the answer, whatever it is, it's written by ChatGPT or other chatbots, right? And how, not that that's a problem, but it's hard to assess. It's hard to do that screening and rely on it and not miss. I think there's a fear of missing out on good candidates or putting forward good candidates that shouldn't have been put forward in the first place. So I think that there's still a need to do something else and to rethink it a bit, right? Yeah. But I think I haven't met anyone that is saying that, no, we don't want the CV at all anymore. No. And then you and I, we can sit here and, but the CV it's not predicting and everything. But still, the CV is not going anywhere. And that's not my, I don't see anyone that has actively taken the steps to remove it. But the cover letter, to a higher extent, is being removed.
That's being removed. But one thing we could do with the resume, if we were to keep it, we could anonymize it. Because seriously, that we are getting so much information in the resume that we don't need.
Yeah.
Now, and the funny thing is also, so this is also where I'm softening up on the resume.
Yeah, interesting.
So remember, I sold software that I had to replace the resume.
I know. I was about to say 4 years ago you would not. I don't think you would have said what you're going to say now.
So we are very categoric about past experience does not predict. That's not entirely true.
Okay, this is interesting.
So Van Edekinge came out with a study, and that was a meta review that showed that, and I often sum it up by saying, some is more than none, more is not better than some. So if I compete for a job with you, and you have up to 2 years of experience and I have 0, then there is actually a better chance that you would, based on, if we only take experience into account, not behavior profile, not IQ, not anything else, just that, there is a better chance of you succeeding in the job than me.
Yeah.
If you have 5 years of experience and I have 2, there's no difference. Yeah. So some is better than none, more is not better than some.
Yeah.
And also, if we apply for a commercial director role, if I've only worked in TA, and you have actually worked as a senior account executive, you've actually worked as a head of sales, head of commercial, then there is a better chance that you will succeed than me. But if I've worked in RevOps, or I've worked as head of sales, and you have worked as commercial, blah, 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 then again, that's not the factor.
Yeah.
So it's just very important to say that we can find some answers in the resume, but what often happens is that, it is that we narrow it so much down that it's not enough that you have sold B2B. You need to have sold B2B complex projects.
Software as a service.
Software as a service to a specific set of stakeholders.
Yeah, in this industry, and you need to have your network in order.
Exactly. Where that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And this is where one of the key findings in all these studies are that there is not one assessment to rule them all. Not even cognitive tests and IQ tests. there is not one, but it's actually the triangulation of them.
Yeah.
And that is where complexity is. I said to you before we started, like in the theoretical best world, we would take all applicants and we would take them through a work sample, a behavior profile personality test, a cognitive test, not verbal and numeric, only figures, symbols for fluid intelligence, not crystallized because it's biased. That's another thing. And then a structured interview process.
Yeah.
Now that's pretty impractical.
Impossible, I think most would say.
But in the perfect of all worlds, we would have all data points on all applicants and make a holistic view on, because again, as we just said, no candidate is 100.
Yeah.
But then we can say, okay, you know what? This person is a bit lower on this factor, but a bit higher here, a bit lower here, a bit higher here. And when we know our onboarding process and where it's strong and where it's not that strong, our current team, our current manager, then we also know what are the compromises that we can live with the best because our organization or the context they are being put in can make up for it. So, and again, then back to one thing that pisses me off is that, but it does, is that companies that think that if, we didn't find candidates that through our screening process was the right match, so we just need to continue. What sometimes right now I have a customer where they have decided they want only to have native German-speaking account executives working with the DACH area, but they need to be located in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
And then I have presented them with a variety of candidates who have B2B sales experience, some in software, some in hardware. They are native German-speaking. They have deselected them all based on all small details and nuances. And where the last conversation we had was like, okay, but I now just need to tell you, there are no more.
Yeah.
We have now ruined the candidate market. We have now been in touch with every German-speaking B2B SaaS salesperson.
This is not a lot, I can tell from experience.
And that means that you are now in trouble because you have not hired any of them. And that means that we are not only in trouble in this recruitment process, you are in trouble going forward if you maintain the requirement of your German-speaking account executives being located in Copenhagen. So you now need to rethink your entire organization.
Because candidate experience is still important, right? As we've talked about before.
And because you've set up some screening requirements that are ridiculous.
Yeah. So back to that, because I think we also need to make it practical.
We need to make it practical.
Because we I love to dream, and it's so easy for you and I to sit here and say, oh, I should be better.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's biased. People are not hiring the best people. People are ruining the chances of hiring the best people because then they don't understand, right? Exactly. And I think, but to get from there to say, okay, it's so easy to sit and criticize. But what do we do then, right? And how do we get practical?
Yeah. One thing we can do is, again, you said if we are very, very good at setting our minimum requirements, this is a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And be very open-minded about it, but these are yes and no questions. Have you managed a complex project before?
Yeah.
Whatever. Can you speak the language? Do you live in proximity of the office? Whatever. We will deselect a lot of people just based on that. But if it's like non-negotiable practical requirements, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Make people answer yes and no, because it's also a lot easier when they get rejected and they have answered no. Then they will say, well, then they will just answer yes to anything. Well, you can just read it and then...
I don't think... And I honestly... I have also heard this before, and I actually don't think... I don't know a lot of candidates who wants to be in a place where they don't have the qualifications.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's say that all the people that go through that first yes and no thing.
Yeah.
Then, as we talked about, and that yes and no can also be instead of a resume.
Yeah.
We can ask the question.
Is that your recommendation?
Yeah. So let's say that we look at a resume to figure out: have you sold B2B software before? Do you have a minimum of 2 years of or do you have not a minimum?
Yeah.
Do you have 2 years of experience selling B2B software? Let's say that's a yes or no question because some is more than none, and I don't have the time to teach you from scratch.
Yeah.
Well, then you have a yes and no. Then you have all the people that have answered yes. You don't need to look at the resume. You have all the people that...
But your hiring manager wants the resume.
I don't care about the hiring manager.
But Nicklas, you know this.
But
your hiring manager wants the resume.
But they shouldn't be a part of recruitment before the end.
That's another conversation.
That's another conversation. But now the funny thing is, Sarah, we can do more, or we can actually do multiple things, and it depends on the company and the role. We can either do a structured conversation screening. So we can call them up, have 15 minutes on the phone. We ask specific questions that, again, point back to the requirements or point back to what we need to screen for. This, and this. Some companies do this, and they succeed with it. So they actually talk with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But they talk very short, and it's structured. They have some... And now you will ask me, why don't they just... Well, it's because it's not yes and no.
Yeah.
It's please describe for me the B2B you have sold. What have the sales cycle looked at? Or how does it look like? Who have you sold to? Just try and describe it for me.
Back to the predictor of success. What is the predictor of success? Not hard-coded qualifications, but what is the predictor of success?
Exactly.
And asking questions for that. Is that what I hear you say?
Exactly. And both pointing backwards. How have you done it before? How would you do it now?
Do you schedule a call? Do you just call people?
No, you always schedule.
Always
you
schedule. Okay.
You can't call.
I'm being very practical here. Yeah. I need to know.
Or you make them book in to you. You have a Calendly.
Yeah.
They book in for you, so you know.
So there's 100 people are applying.
But that's one thing we can do.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
Then you are down with the hard-coded questions that will automatically disqualify a portion. You are down to 70? 80?
More. Or you're less. Less.
Really? Okay. I take your word for it.
Because remember...
Where are we at?
Remember, all the A players in your industry, they're not applying for a job.
Yeah, but then you use someone like you, right? But I mean, now we're talking about the applicant here.
Yeah, so my guess would be from 100, simple yes or no questions, 50.
Okay, cool.
You
wonderful.
Lose half.
We are at 50. We call up 50.
You can call 50.
I call 50.
Yeah.
Spend 10 minutes with them.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Then I disqualify. What am I down to then?
You want to go down to... That depends on your process, but you want to go down to...
We're hiring a sales executive for...
10.
We're down to 10 now.
Yeah. Then you do a behavior profile.
Wonderful. What do I do that with? And why? Why behavioral profile?
Because what you have done is you have done one on yourself.
Yeah.
You have done one on your entire team. So you have perfect data on, okay, in our specific culture and context, what are some of the traits, some of the behavioral tendencies, some of the strengths that we have because it's our culture, it's our market, so we need that. But also because you've asked yourself the question, so what do we need because we like that? What do we need because we lack it? So now you do a behavior profile, and now you see, okay, I want to go from 10 to 5. And now you ask them to come in for an interview. And what you do, again, it's a structured interview. And in the best of all worlds, you do a case-based interview. So it's not a chit and chat.
Always. Is this always your for any role?
Yeah.
Case-based behavioral assessment.
Yes, and in your interview, it's structured, and it's a mixture of competency-based, past-oriented based questions. How have you done this before? Please tell us about that. And future-based questions. Yeah. How would you do this in this context? How would you do it?
Yeah.
So you get that, again, triangulation of data.
What if you're in retail? You need, or let's just take Joe and the Juice.
So this is funny, right? Because this is where recruitment is contextual.
Thank you. That's what I hoped you would say.
Yeah. So now this is not to say that a juicer is less important than the CFO in Joe and the Juice. But again, requirements.
The predictor of success is different.
It is. And also, how much can you learn? How much specific knowledge do you need? so let's say that we were hiring people in retail. There's not that much very specific, specialized knowledge you need for frontline retail that requires 3 years at the university, that requires 5 years of experience. So what do you need? Well, how much can we actually predict by a behavioral assessment? How much can we predict based on what we call situational judgment test? You are presented with 10, 20, 30, just everyday scenarios. McDonald's. You on the drive-in, a colleague is calling you saying you need to abandon the window to come help her. What do you do? And again, if you know exactly at McDonald's, because in retail you can structure things, what do we want people to do?
Yeah.
What should be their inherent, their intuitive, what should their intuition say they would do? We actually have some very cool studies. And this is not even in retail. This is actually on graduates from medical school, where situational judgment tests could actually pretty closely predict their final assessment scores from their supervisors. So we can do a lot of things, but the most important is point it back, look at job complexity, look at how much specific specialized knowledge do you need, how many people do you need to hire.
Yeah. Is it a surgeon? Is it for retail? There's a difference there, and we need to assess people different.
Exactly.
And screen people different.
So
what is the equation here? This is still called the recruitment equation.
Yeah.
We need to get to it, right? And we're running out of time here, Nicklas, as most happens.
Yeah.
The sort of building blocks.
Yeah.
For this equation.
Yeah.
My important part here is really the very clear preparation that goes into before you start screening the role description.
Yeah.
What are the qualifications? What is it that we're looking for? What is the predictor of success for this role? We need to make sure we invest there. Otherwise, we're never going to be independent of what personality test, independent of what test we do later on. Exactly. We will not get the best people for the job.
Nope.
And it will also be more biased, which is, of course, one of my things.
Yeah.
What are the other building blocks?
Well, just to double click on that.
Yeah.
So let's call it a success profile. So what is the predictor of success? I actually believe that, going back to the last thing, knowing your own context. So that, the context of the hiring process, which team, which company, which role, the job complexity, all of that. So context analysis leads to the success profile, which leads to your screening strategy. So this is what you need to succeed in. So this is what you need to succeed. This is how we will detect, or we will evaluate if you have the stuff you need to succeed. And then I think it's very important to, the last thing is, have a very structured screening process. Yeah. Knowing what to do, when to do it, how to handle the information you get, and especially how to, back to candidate experience, how to communicate all of this, both what will happen, why will it happen, and when it has happened, what did it show, and how have we used your data to make a decision based on that data, if you are a match or not.
Yeah, very good. I like it. There's a lot of things in that that you said there, but also, consistency. Can experience is actually, in part of the screening, and doing proper screening is also important, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that in another episode, so we won't touch more upon that. Anything missing there for successful screening?
Like, the most important point is, there is no such thing as a perfect recruitment process. In the same company, even in the same department, you might need to change the order of things, the pace of your process, dependent on the context.
Yeah.
And that is important. That is actually, that is when we move up the ladder to like TA expertise, that is when that I actually need to build a recruitment process for each hire. And even I'm even there where I'm considering, should we even create different, individual recruitment or screening processes in the same recruitment process. So let's say that someone is going to hire a commercial director. We are both candidates. That person knows that at some point they will want to have a work sample, behavior profile, resume, blah, blah. So they know they have those data points. But I can choose, and you can choose, the order of things. What if I want to solve a work sample as my first step? Because I know that's where I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm not as good in my behavior profile. What if you want to go on a video screening as the first thing because you are a fucking communicator? So you know,
I know how to do that. I'll kill it.
Yeah. You press record and then you just go. And now I know that the challenge is, well, then you don't judge people on the same data point. No, that's right. But you do know that at some point you would have all data points on the people you choose anyway. So why not make the very introvert software developer choose, do I really want to go through this process where I really suck? Or should I actually be able to choose?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm with you on that 100%, Nicklas, but where I am with you is to say, I think we've really designed a thing where you really win if you're really good at applying. The screening is favoring people good at applying for jobs, extroverts, not always the best people for the job. Exactly. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
So designing it for the people in the way to maximize the chances of actually figuring out how do we get the best people for the job.
Yeah.
And it could be, I don't know, it could be anyone on the spectrum, autism spectrum, HGSD. There's just so many roles and so many examples. Out of the conference, I was just telling you, right, last week, where there's a brilliant example where a private hospital up in the northern part of Zealand hired someone for recognition in, I don't know that word in English.
X-ray.
X-ray. Thank you so much, Nicklas. I knew you were the right partner for this. And they were better than all the experts that's been trained for years because they were really good at pattern recognition. Right? How do we make sure that we always find the right, and it does require that we sometimes rethink how we hire a bit.
Yeah.
Not to make it should be fair. We should judge people on the same always, but how do we make sure that we are not only favoring the extroverts, good at talking, like myself and yourself.
Yeah.
I'll end with that note.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you so much.